Right, we're going to look at the different software design and development questions that come up in the exam. Particularly in this one, we're going to focus in on explaining the code questions. The different kinds of questions you can be asked are to explain in English what's happening inside the code, how to do an input validation, possibly write an input validation. You could be asked what's wrong with if statements, you could be asked to write if statements, you could be asked about fixed loops, conditional loops, and you could be asked about assignment statements. Now, when you're asked to explain the code, there are some simple rules you need to follow to get your marks. Firstly, make sure that you take each line one at a time, write down the line number, write down what type of line it is. Is it an input? Is it an output? Is it a process? Is it a condition? Is it an if statement? And then you say what the line does. Now, when you're saying what the line does, you talk about the variables and you talk about what is happening to the data inside the variables. That's what the markers are looking for. And if you follow these rules, you'll get it right. So, here is some code from the old CD Intermediate 2 task. Line 1, get the number of tracks from user. 2, for each track. 3, get the title of track. 4, get the length of track. 5, set total to total plus length. 6, end repeat. 7, display total running time. And I should point out here that I've not written this in Haggis. In your exam, it will be written in Haggis, but you know that you should be able to look at whatever's written down, whether it's code or whether it's pseudocode or specifically Haggis, and be able to work it out. Just read it and see what it says. It's dead obvious. So what you're going to do is you're going to take this code and you're going to explain what's happening in that code in English. So the following slides are going to take you through how to make sure you get these marks, because that's what it's all about. So look at the code again. We're going to start at line 1. So line 1 there says, get the number of tracks from the user. So my first thought is, what is that line? Is it an input? Is it a process? Is it an output? Well, it's an input. We're asking the user to enter data, and what variable are we going to store it in? So the way we write it out, dead simple. You write line 1, this is an input line. The user is asked to enter a number and it is stored in the variable number of tracks. Let's look at line 2, for each track. Now we know that for each track is a fixed loop. Now the way we do the fixed loop or any loop is we look at where the for and where the end is. So I can see the end is at line 6. So what lines does that mean I'm repeating? Well, I'm repeating everything in between the begin and the end. Line 2 is my begin for each track. Line 6 is my end repeat. So that means that I'm going to repeat lines 3, 4 and 5 for the number of tracks that I've got. So if the user input 5 tracks at line 1, I'm going to repeat lines 3, 4 and 5 times. If they input 20 number of tracks, I'm going to repeat lines 3, 4 and 5 20 times. So how would we write that down? Line 2, this is a fixed loop, and lines 3, 4 and 5 were repeated for the number stored in the variable track. Look at that, I'm talking about the data stored inside the variables. Remember, that's what they're looking for. Line 3, get title of track. Input, process, output, clearly an input. If you look at what you wrote for line 1, you should be able to easily turn that into line 3. So let's look at it. Line 3, this is an input line. The user is asked to enter data and it is stored in the variable name. Line 4, get length of track. It's an input line. The user is asked to enter data and that data is going to be stored in the variable length. Hopefully you're seeing the pattern. And there it is, exactly as I said it. Next one, line 5. Well, this isn't an input, it's not an output, it's a calculation. So set total to total plus length. So line 5, this is a process. You could have written calculation, that's fine. This is a process. It adds the current data and length to the data and total to get the new total. Easy peasy. So line 6 is just my end repeat. Line 6, this line ends what lines have to be repeated. Yeah, that one, I was a wee bit fuzzy, it got away from me, that one. And then line 7, display the total running time. This is an output and it's going to send the total running time to your screen. This is an output line. It displays the data stored in the total on the screen. So there's what your answer would be. Now, I would expect that to be worth at least 5 marks in the exam. It's not difficult, but what you have to write down, you just have to make sure that you're writing down certain things. You're talking about the data, you're talking about what's happening to the data inside the variables. That's the key thing to this. Here's orchestra. Now, what we didn't have in the last one was an if statement. Now, please remember, the purpose of if statements is to allow you to make a decision. Now, you're going to get 2 types of questions for explaining the code. The first one is you just get a lump of code, talk through what happens. That was what we did in example 1. In example 2, you're going to be given the data that is stored inside the variables, and you've got to say what happens based on that data. Now, that's what's going to be in this part of the code. So this time, I know the age is 14, and I know that my total score is 76. So here's my code again. Display the pupil name. If the total score is greater than 70, we know it's 76, then if the pupil age is greater than 11 and the pupil age is less than 15, then display accepted to junior orchestra. Else, display accepted to senior orchestra, end if. Now notice line 2 comes down to line 8 else, so if my total score is not greater than 70, display not accepted, end if. So this is what we have to work through. My total score is 76, my pupil's age is 14. You should be able to see straight away what it is that's going to be displayed on the screen, but you've got to talk about how you get there. Line 1. This is an output line. Let me jump back. Display pupil name. This is an output line. It displays the data stored in the variable name. I'm still talking about data. I'm still talking about variables. Next line. If the total score is greater than 70. Well, I run that line. My total score is 76. So, is 76 greater than 70? So what we write is line 2. This is a selection. You could have written if statement. This is a selection. It checks to see, is the data in total score greater than 70? Total score is 76, so that means that lines 3 to 7 are run. We would not run line 9, because that is if it's not greater than 70. So what we're going to run is 3 through to 7. Right, next line is if the pupil's age is greater than 11 and the pupil's age is less than 15. Now we know the pupil's age is 14. So our score is greater than 70, we went into line 3. My pupil's age is 14, which is greater than 11, and my pupil's age is less than 15. So what does that tell me? Line 3 says that if my pupil's age is in between those 2 brackets, 14 is, then I'm going to run line 4. So line 3, this is a selection. It checks to see if the pupil's age is greater than 11 and less than 14. Pupil's age is 14, so line 4 is run. So go back to your code here. I am now going to run line 4. Line 4, this is an output line. It displays in the screen the text accepted to junior orchestra. That is what gets displayed. Nothing else gets displayed in this code. Because look at 5, if my age is not between 11 and 15, display accepted to senior. That doesn't happen. End if, we finish it, we come down to line 8. Well, my total score was more than 70, so I don't run line 9. That's us finished our code. That's what you would write. Okay, here's an example. The first example, here's your turn. The first one is the same as the first example. And there's another one which is the same as example 2 for you to work through. Please work through them and then ask your teacher to mark them.